So good afternoon and welcome to the Tech Summit. On behalf of everyone at Microsoft and particularly the SharePoint and OneDrive team, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy days to learn what you can do to leverage OneDrive to share files and collaborate on files and access files no matter where you are, on any device at any time. And in this session, that's exactly what we're going to cover. So we're going to look at what OneDrive means and how it supports you, your work, your files, and your organization. We're going to spend the bulk of the time demoing what's new in SharePoint, and I'll give you a look at the roadmap of what's coming up in the next few months. And then, of course, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of this presentation. Because we're recording this presentation, I'm going to do something a little bit differently than I normally do, which is ask you to hold questions until the end, just so we can make the best use of the recording. So please do hold those, but don't lose track of them. I definitely want to answer those questions for you. So that's what today is about, and we're here to talk about OneDrive, which of course is one of the core services provided by Office 365. And Office 365 is really about providing the most powerful, scalable, reliable, and secure collaboration service in the cloud to help your organization succeed, and to give you a suite of tools and experiences that allow you to work the way you want to work. If you went to the sessions earlier today, you certainly saw this slide that shows how the services that used to be on-premises only and were among world-leading server products are now working together in the cloud as a suite of increasingly integrated cloud services backed by fabric services like Office 365 Groups to make it easy to define membership, Microsoft Graph to provide intelligence that powers your productivity and surfaces actionable insights, and security and compliance to make sure that your business data is secure, private, compliant, and under your control. And as we think about collaboration, one of the core workloads of collaboration is file sharing. No matter what you do and what job you have, the odds are pretty good that you share files, or that at least you work on files and need to save them for yourself. And OneDrive is really the experience and the front end of the service that allows you to power your file collaboration in Office 365 across all of Office 365. It's about being able to create and collaborate on documents in real time. As I mentioned earlier, to work on any device across PC and Mac browsers, iOS, Android, and Windows mobile devices, and to be able to work anywhere, including in disconnected scenarios, through capabilities like offline files and sync, and managing file-centric business processes, allowing you to work the way you need to work within the context of your goals and the goals of your team to move documents through their journey in your organization. So that's what OneDrive is all about. It's about accessing, sharing, and collaborating on files anywhere on any device. Now, of course, OneDrive is the front end to all of your files in Office 365. It's where you store your individual files. But there's more to file sharing than just OneDrive. We also have SharePoint, which we'll be talking about more in the next session. And SharePoint is designed to really up-level the file sharing scenario to include the ability to manage and organize vast quantities of files, to be able to share more than just files, but also lists and data, news and information with your team. And so one of the questions that regularly comes up is really, how do SharePoint and OneDrive support my work in my organization? You should think about OneDrive as my files. This is where I store my stuff. Whereas SharePoint is really for our files. It's for the files we share on our team. And to give you an example of this, let's take a look at what happens when I create a presentation like the one you're looking at right now. I create that presentation and I store it in my OneDrive. Now, I may very well need to get some input from my team members as I'm drafting that presentation, so there's one or two of my team members that I'll share it with and get feedback from them. When that presentation is finished and it's really ready to share with the entire team or with the broader organization, I'll often move it into a SharePoint team site, which is already designed and secured to support the collaboration of my team. And within that team site, that presentation exists not just as a single file, but exists with all of the other files and data and lists and news and information that we're sharing with my team. So a file can be shared from OneDrive or from SharePoint. The question is simply, what's the bigger picture of the work that's happening around that file? If there's going to be more work and that really is centered around the team, SharePoint's a great place to put that, and we'll look at SharePoint in the next session. Now, all of this file sharing, this collaboration, this storage is backed by the Microsoft Cloud, which, as I'm sure you've heard today, is really a leader across a number of fronts, including high availability. We financially guarantee 3 nines of availability. We're hitting much closer to 4 nines right now. Global scale across every continent and dedicated clouds for specific types of organizations like the US government. New data centers being opened almost every month, most recently in Germany, and then before that in the UK and Canada. Backed by an incredible support for dozens and dozens and dozens of compliance standards, and a commitment to privacy. Your data, your company's data, belongs to you. It's not ours. We are simply custodians of your data. So it's important that you're able to take confidence in the fact that what you store in Office 365 is being used only to further empower and to reinvent productivity and drive digital transformation within your specific organization. So that's the broader context of OneDrive for Business. Now let's drill in and talk about OneDrive for Business itself. In the last year, OneDrive for Business has been, we might say, completely overhauled. We've invested a huge amount of money and time and resources to up-level the capabilities and the experiences of OneDrive for Business. It starts with the product experience, making sure that OneDrive can be how you access all of your files in Office 365. It becomes like the file explorer for Office 365, allowing you to get not just to your individual files that you use for work, but also the files in your teams, your groups, your SharePoint sites. Making sure that that experience translates across any place you would need OneDrive. A fast, responsive browser experience, mobile apps on Windows, Android, and iPhone, all of which are rated 4 stars or greater. They're being received extremely well by the community. And within all of those experiences, making sure that you're not just able to access your files, but it's easier and easier to share those files securely, not only with internal users, but with users outside of your organization as well. We want to make sure that you can work disconnected, and we announced at Ignite the preview of the new OneDrive Sync capability, which supports synchronization of SharePoint Online team sites and folders that another user has shared with you. And we'll be releasing that client to general availability very, very, very soon. In fact, most people who listen to this recording will probably already have the final version of that client. We have deep integration into Office, including great features like cloud attachments in Outlook, and intelligent experiences that ensure that you're able to find the content you need as quickly as possible. So the product experience is first class. Behind it, all of the services that we provide to ensure that data is secure, compliant, under your control, and extensible by developers. Everything from controlling what's shared and how it's shared, to providing DLP, data loss prevention, conditional access policies, managing how users access data on mobile devices, and providing APIs so that developers can build experiences on top of OneDrive. So if you have a custom process, you're able to build that process to store that process's files inside of OneDrive. The investment we've put into the product has really paid off. In the last year, we've seen more than a doubling of active usage. We've been recognized as a leader by Forrester. We have 150 million downloads of mobile apps and counting, and great case studies up in our case study center if you're curious about how specific companies have leveraged OneDrive. We have customers who have literally heavy lifted their entire file sharing capability for more than 150,000 users all at once into the cloud in order to enable greater productivity and mobile access to and collaboration on files. So it's been a big, big, big year for us. I want to set the stage for the demos that we're going to see so that you can sort of see the big picture, and then we'll dive in and look at the details. This is all about making sure that you can share, access, collaborate on files securely on any device at any time. We want to make sure that you can access all of your files in Office 365 and that you can take them offline with Sync. We want to make sure that you can find and discover files more easily through features like tiles and preview, great search, and the new Discover view, which helps you find files that you may not even know exist, but will be important to your work, powered by Microsoft Graph. Making sure that you can share those files easily with users and groups with something as easy as sending a link, and managing that sharing so that you and your organization can ensure the right data is not falling into the wrong hands, and with lots of administrative controls. We want to ensure that you can create and collaborate in real time with real-time co-authoring, deep integration with Office. And finally, we want to make sure that you can understand the impact of your work. Sharing and collaborating is great, but often you need to know more than that. How much impact did my file have? How many people viewed it? How many people have found that file to be valuable? So this is the framework for the investments that we will be talking about in the what's new part of this session. So without further ado, let's dive in and let's actually start demoing these capabilities. So I'm going to switch to my phone to start with here. Whoops, didn't take. Let's see. Oh, let's hit the wrong button. There we go. All right. So we're going to start actually on our mobile device, because that is sort of the edge case that we need to make sure that you can get to your files and collaborate on them even if you're on the road on a mobile device. So I've got OneDrive on my phone, and here in OneDrive we see, for example, my individual files. I can get to all of them, and I can get to the files that are part of my groups and teams and sites as well. You'll notice the third button from the left on the bottom is Sites. And if I go to that, I can see all of my SharePoint sites. Now, as that loads, and hopefully the Wi-Fi won't give up on me here. Yeah, as that loads, let me go ahead and show more. I'll point out that SharePoint is the content management service in Office 365. Behind the scenes, files are stored and managed in SharePoint. And that's true whether you're seeing those files in the context of a SharePoint team site, whether you're seeing them in an Outlook group, or whether you're seeing them in a Microsoft Teams files experience, and very soon within Yammer as well. All of the file storage is happening in SharePoint. And so by surfacing these sites in OneDrive, it means you can get to your files. If all you need to do is get to a file, you don't have to think about, did I store that file in X, Y, or Z app? You just go and get your files, and you can get to them here in the list of sites. And you can see the way this list is created. I can see the sites I go to frequently, which is most likely going to be the ones I need to get to. But I can also intentionally follow a site. I can mark a site as important to me so that it shows up under followed sites. So I can get into my sites, and let's say that I want to go to the loyalty program, for example. And here in the loyalty program, I'm going to dive into the regional launch plans. So this is, it looks like a folder, but in fact it is a document library on a SharePoint team site, and I can see all of the files in that document library. Now this list is fine, but if it's a lot of files, it can be difficult to find exactly the files I want. And so we've added the ability to view files in tile view. So if I click the tile view, we see those previews start to render there. And you'll see I can see previews of pictures and videos, which you might expect. I can also see previews of Office document formats like PDFs. And we're adding support for more than 24 file formats, including popular Adobe formats, not just PDF, but also Illustrator and Photoshop, so that you can find these files without having to go to separate applications to preview them and view them. So I'm looking through this list of files here, and I see one that might be useful. Let's try this one here. But I'm not 100% sure that this is the document I want. I can actually force touch that document and get a preview. Wi-Fi's a little slow. So that I can check out this document without even having to leave the context of OneDrive. And if that's not the document I want, I can just keep on looking. So we've got thumbnail previews, we've got rich previews that are exposed through mobile-specific gestures like force touch. And I can also open up that document right within OneDrive. So OneDrive has built-in previewers for PDFs, for example, and I can look through that PDF. And assuming I have permission, I can even mark up that document. I can highlight it and annotate that document right within OneDrive. So we've got rich previews and thumbnails that will help me find the files I need. Once I found the file I want, I can decide what I want to do with it. So let's say, for example, that I want to share this file. One of the goals of OneDrive is to make it as easy as possible to share. We're on mobile. What could be better than integrating with the native sharing capability of the mobile device? In this case, iOS uses the little share icon at the top, and I can go through and I can use the standard iOS sharing capabilities to send this out with whatever applications I've wired to allow sharing. I can even change the permissions on that document. So let me go back in and do that again. So right now I've got the ability to say people in Contoso can view and edit, but I can go through and change that permission as well if I need to. Let's say that this file is going to be particularly important for me to work on with a customer where I might not have good cell signal. I might want to have that file available to refer to offline, and so I'm going to go ahead and click the parachute button at the top of the screen, and that takes that file offline. Now that that file is offline, I'm going to go to my customer where I have very poor cell signal. I'll actually go into airplane mode. So now I'm at my customer site, and I can go to the Me view on the bottom right. And in the Me view, I can go to offline files, and sure enough, I can see that document, open it up, and work with it offline. Now, on mobile devices right now, this is not the same thing as a sync. This is truly the ability to take the file offline and refer to it. If I wanted to make changes, I would need to have a process of saving a version that I upload later, whatever the case might be. This is not sync. Sync we will see in a few moments on PC and or Mac. But I'm able to work with that file offline. And if I'm done and I no longer need it offline, I can go ahead and click the parachute button at the top that is currently has a cross through it to say I don't need that offline anymore, and I can go back on Wi-Fi. So we've made it easy to get into all of your files in Office 365, to find files through features like tile view, previews, and rich previews within the application itself. We make it possible for you to share those files easily and take them offline. And finally, if you're really not sure where a file is, you can always start at the very, very top and search. So if I search for market performance, I will find the files that match that. That must not have been exactly the title, across all of Office 365. So this allows me to search for specific content and open it up. And then finally, on Android, we have the Discover view, which we'll see in the web browser in a moment, that allows Microsoft Graph to recommend files that might be useful to me. And that view will be coming to iOS as well here. Once I've found the documents I want, I can also, of course, open them up within the Office application. So if this Add Slogans document is one that I need to work on, I can click it. I can get the rich preview, and then I can open it in Word by clicking the Word icon at the top, where I get the full mobile experience of Word, PowerPoint, Excel on my mobile device to actually work with that file. Now, we mentioned the fact that we have very, very deep integration with Microsoft Office. One of them is the fact that you can open files either in a browser, in a mobile app, or in, of course, the rich Office applications. Another integration is the fact that we are keeping track of the files you've worked on recently so that you can get back to them quickly wherever you are. Most of you are probably familiar with the concept of a most recently used list, where you go to File, Open, and you see what you recently worked on. That is now being stored, surprise, in OneDrive, so that wherever you are, you can get to those files. So if I go to Word and go to the Backstage here to open up a file, I can see the most recently used list, and this list would be exactly the same if I went to Word on my PC or if I went to Word in the browser with Word Online. So that makes it super easy for you to get back to work quickly wherever you left off. And personally, as someone who does use a couple of devices, I always have a laptop and a phone, and often I'll have other devices that I'm sitting at. I cannot even tell you how much time this saves. You don't have to remember where something was and go hunt for it. You simply go to the application, the Office application, and open that back up. So that's just one example of that deep Office integration that we were talking about. Last but not least on the mobile device is the idea that you want to see how much impact your work has had. Back on the Me tab, I've got the ability to see files that have been particularly active in my space. And you'll notice that there's been a lot of views of the article about Chinese fashion. I can see that there have been 16 views, but it sort of dropped off recently. And I can even go in and look at an activity track to sort of see when and how this document has been viewed. And this is just a first glimpse at our journey that we're taking to really help you understand how your files have been utilized by your colleagues so that you can understand the impact of your work. So we've got once again, to sort of summarize OneDrive on the mobile device, we've got the ability to get to your files, to the files of on your SharePoint sites, which thus includes Outlook groups, Microsoft Teams, and very soon Yammer. We've got the ability to share files easily and even see files that have been shared with you. So we have a shared view where you can quickly get to a file someone shared with you, so you don't have to go hunting for that link they sent you. It's just there in OneDrive. That recent view, this is across all Office 365, obviously, and the ability to search, discover, share, and collaborate on those files. With that seen in the mobile world, let's jump back to the browser to see similar experiences in the browser. So here we are in OneDrive on the web. And OneDrive renders beautifully, whether you're using Edge or Chrome or Safari on Mac. It works beautifully across browsers. It's responsive if you happen to be using a browser on a small device instead of using the OneDrive app. Within this web experience, we can see many of the features that we've been looking at on the mobile app. So we start with the various views of documents. How can I get to my documents? I can see my files, and I can see the files in my organization. So here under Contoso are those sites that we were talking about. And within these sites, I can jump into a particular site that I want to get to documents to. Here's again that regional launch plans folder that we were looking at. And just as we saw on the phone, the browser also allows us to view these documents in rendered thumbnails, to oftentimes see previews of these documents, and therefore to identify the document that I'm really looking for. We also have that search capability at the very top left-hand corner. So again, if I'm looking for a file on market performance, I can perform a search here, and this search, again, is going to return any document that I have access to in Office 365 that matches those terms. I can see the files that I've worked on recently. This, again, is that list that's powering the Backstage experience in Office 365. So if I went to any Office app and opened and did File Open, I would see a filtered view of this list. I can see the files that have been shared with me. And here's that Discover view that I mentioned exists also on Android. This view is powered by Microsoft Graph. And as you probably remember from the keynote and from other presentations today, Microsoft Graph is about understanding you, your work, your colleagues, the content that you're working on, and allowing those relationships to drive greater productivity. Among the things that Microsoft Graph can do is surface recommendations. So this is showing me files that are being worked on by people close to me with the theory that one of these files might be useful to help me drive my own productivity. And I'm only going to see files that I have access to. Behind the scenes is the search index driving this, and you will not see things that you don't have access to. But if you've been given permission to it and someone's been working on it, and Microsoft Graph believes it will help you accelerate the velocity of your work, it's going to show up here. And for me personally, working in a large organization like Microsoft, this kind of view helps me almost every day. I discover a piece of content that a colleague is working on that allows me to get a leap ahead of what I would normally know exists and be able to work on. So that's that Discover view. And then within this, we've got the ability to, again, open documents in Office. Now, briefly here, let's look at this marketing goals for Q2 document. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Oh, that was interesting. Not sure what happened there. Good times. Edge has gone on vacation. That is bizarre. You see something new every day, don't you? How many of you in IT have seen everything? Yeah, there's always something new, right? So why I really did that is to prove that OneDrive renders beautifully in any browser. So let's open up Chrome. It's working well enough to give me that tip. That's hysterical and sad. All right, so here we are in Chrome. And I'll take a step back, by the way. When users want to get to OneDrive in the browser experience, it's as easy as going to the app launcher and picking OneDrive. So we were here in OneDrive, and I completely forgot. Oh, I was opening a document, right. So let's go ahead and open up a different document here. We'll open up this one. So by default, the application will launch if all I do is click it, it's keeping me in the web experience and opening it in the web version of Word, PowerPoint, or Excel, which makes it really, really fast to open. If all I need to do is do a quick read or a quick edit, I'll often use Word to do that. Or sorry, the online versions of the Office apps to do that. And I can make changes in the browser. As you probably know, Office Online supports a subset of the features of the rich Office client, but a really solid subset. There's not a small number of times that I'm able to do all the work I need within the context of the browser client version of Office. But I also have the ability to edit it directly in the Office application. So we'll go ahead and open it up. While that's happening, I would have had the ability to do that automatically by selecting the file and then choosing Open in Word directly instead of this sort of two-step process. Okay, and while that's happening here, let me get one other thing going. Okay, close a couple of things down here. Okay, so we have the document open in Word now. And once again, as we saw on the mobile device, we've got integration into Office in a number of different ways, which include the ability to get to my most recent files. Notice this is exactly the same list we saw on the mobile device, except the file I just opened is now on top. We've got immediate access to files, whether they're stored in my personal OneDrive or in any of the sites I belong to in Office 365. So I can get to all of those files very, very, very easily. And once I'm in this document, I can start collaborating in real time with my colleagues. And this, I think, is one of the most exciting capabilities of working in a cloud service, is the ability to work truly as a team. We saw in the mobile device that I have the ability to share a file. I also have the ability to share from, which document I'm in? So fashion notes. I've got the ability to share from the browser experience, and we'll come back and look at that. So I could use share or get a link to share this file. But notice, even inside of Word, in the upper right, I've got the ability to initiate the share. So if I'm in Word and I'm thinking, gosh, I'd really like Bill's feedback on this document, I can go ahead and share it right now with Bill. So I'm going to go ahead and invite the president of Contoso here, Mr. Bill Baer. And please take a look and share it with him. And notice in the share panel, I can not only initiate the share, but I've got the ability to see who I've shared this file with. And I can then choose to remove that permission or change that permission for that particular user. So I'm going to go ahead and make a few changes. Let's go ahead and add 2017 to this and save my changes by clicking Save in the upper corner here. And then let's go and see what Bill's experience is with this. All right. So Bill is working away. He might be using the rich version of Outlook. I'm just going to use the web version. It's easier to manage multiple credentials on a machine by doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and as Bill, see the email that's arrived that has the email that I sent, including the message that says, please take a look, and a link to that document. So Bill's going to go ahead and open that up. And he is now looking at the document at the same time as me. Notice there's the change I just recently made. He also has the share panel. And that little message is actually coming to Dan. That is my Skype, notifying me that Bill's now available because it knows I'm trying to collaborate with him. But still, as Bill here, Bill has the ability to continue working very much like we saw in other places so far. If I go back to Word now, and let's actually have Bill make a change. Bill is going to start changing this document. So he chooses Edit. There's that Share panel that we had in Word again. And notice Bill can see that Dan is also editing the document. So Bill sees that Dan is editing the document online. And on my side, it gives me a notification that Bill is editing this document. It gives me a little guide to how this works. I'm going to go ahead and notice the core message here is, do I want to automatically share changes as they happen? So I'm going to go ahead and click Yes. And just to pull up that panel again, I now can see Bill's editing in real time and Dan is editing. And I'm going to go ahead and go down here a little bit further and make a change. So we'll go ahead and change the city to Chicago, Illinois. And let's jump back and see Bill. Now notice what Bill sees right now is a little icon indicating that the paragraph is locked, that Dan is editing that specific paragraph, so he sees that. So let's go ahead and have him make a change. So he's making a change as well. And on my side, I see a little indicator as to the change he's making. Now what will happen is, as I work, Word will save changes. We asked it to automatically save changes. Every few moments, it's going to save the changes. I can also manually save the changes by clicking Save in the upper left corner. And as soon as those changes get saved, either automatically or manually, Bill sees those changes. So the person working in the web browser will see changes whenever the rich application saves or updates those changes. If you're both working in the web browser, it's completely real time. And the main point is, if you're in the rich application, the changes are both uploaded and downloaded whenever that automatic or manual save happens. So we're seeing the changes be made in real time, and that's great. But let's say what I need to do is I need to ask Bill a specific question. Oh, this is not working for me right at the moment. We'll have Bill ask me a question. Okay, the Skype integration is not working right now. This is purely due to the nature of my demo environment right now. But you also can launch conversations right in the document through Skype. So I can launch the conversation with Bill, get his feedback, ask what's going on. And so we can continue to work beautifully. And when we're all done, I'm going to go ahead and close this document. Oh, here, I can get oh no, that's not quite the same. There's the dimmed capability I was just referring to. Hey, Bill, what do you think? And on Bill's side, because I'm in private mode, probably it is not going to come up. So we'll skip that one for now. And we'll close. Bill gets notified that I'm no longer saving the document, and he can go ahead and close his browser. No need to save because the changes you make in the browser are being saved in real time, and there's that Skype notification I was looking for. Was me being a little bit impatient. So Bill responds, and I get a notification in my Skype from that response. So we can initiate the conversation within Word, just have to be a little bit more patient than I was being. So now that we have made some changes to this document, Office has kept track of the activity around that document, and I can get a view of what's going on straight from OneDrive. So I can see, for example, that Bill Baer was the last one to edit this document right on the tile. I can get further information about that document by opening the Information panel. In the upper right corner, I have an eye. I can open that up, and that's the information panel about this document. It gives me a preview of the document that allows me to sort of take a look at what this document actually is. I can get an overview of the document properties, and then I can see the activity on this document. So I can see that each of us made edits 3 minutes ago, that I shared it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I can manage the sharing properties. So right here from the information panel, I can add additional people to share with. I can stop sharing. I can change or remove individual permissions from the panel. And then down here at the bottom, I get the broader set of document properties. So I've got the ability to work with that document right within the document information panel in OneDrive as well. That activity feed also feeds into the rich Office clients. So soon, I believe this version of Word doesn't have it yet. Soon, we will have an activity panel exposed in Word that surfaces that exact same activity. So within the context of the document, you'll be able to see what people have done with that document and what's been going on. Now that, of course, is in addition to the built-in capabilities of an application like Word that allows you to track changes, make comments on the document, et cetera. So Word takes that even to the next level. Sometimes when you make changes to a document, though, it doesn't go so well. And it's nice to be able to go back and see previous versions of the document. One of the great capabilities of a service like Office 365 is there to help protect you from mistakes that you or your colleagues make. And we've got the ability to dive into the version history of this document and roll back to a document at a period of time in the past. So for example, if I rolled back to this one, that would be the one that I initially shared. That version history also surfaces within Office. So one of the deep integration points is that if I go to Word, for example, and look at the history, I see that exact same history information in Word. And if I go to Compare Docs, I've got the ability to compare the current version of the document to a previous version. So I can compare to that earlier version and see the changes that were made. There's the markup that's showing that changes were made. Let me view it a little bit more obviously here, and I can see that change. So we've got version history. We've got the fact that you can roll back to versions either from the browser or from an application like Word, and the ability to leverage capabilities of an application like Word to actually see the specific changes that have been made. And that ability to co-author, to make comments, to see revisions is very rich in Word. We're enhancing PowerPoint with those capabilities, and as well as Excel. So those same kinds of use cases will work across all of the three major document creation services in Office 365. Let's take a look at some of the other things that are enabled in the command bar in the OneDrive view here. We've got version history, which we were just talking about, standard file operations like rename and move and delete. We also have copy. And one of the things we've just added to OneDrive and SharePoint is the ability to copy files from one place to another, a completely different container. So if I've been working on this file within my personal OneDrive, and I'm now ready to share it with the whole team, this is where I can choose to copy this item to the loyalty program, and I can put it into those into the document library of my choice. Let's say I choose to put it in Documents. And I can go ahead and choose to copy that there. And that file is now literally copy and pasted into the target location, allowing me to reorganize my files. If I then want to delete the version that's in my OneDrive, I certainly can. The files are not linked together. It's not a linking. We'll see that separately. But it is the ability to copy files from OneDrive to SharePoint, and right now starting to roll out the ability to copy from SharePoint to OneDrive. In addition, we've got the ability to download. And one of the great new things that we've added to the service that people have been asking for is the ability to download an entire folder or file. So I can click download, and notice it comes down as a zip file. So I've got that file ready to go. And similarly, another thing that people were asking for very clearly was the ability to upload files and folders. And you can upload multiple items at a time, either from the menus or by dragging and dropping directly into the OneDrive interface. So a lot of capabilities baked into the OneDrive experience in the web, in mobile. The last core part of the OneDrive experience is the ability to take these files on the road with you. And that's what sync is all about. Sync allows me to synchronize my world. So I'm going to go ahead and sync, and I can choose which folders I want to sync. I can choose to sync everything or nothing, and I can go ahead and start that sync. Now, this, to be completely transparent here, I have already synced my OneDrive to my system, so it's not quite that fast, but it is here now, and here is my OneDrive with all of those files ready to go. That's been in OneDrive for quite a long time. And over last year, we increased the reliability of OneDrive Sync, so it is now as strong and reliable as the entire Office 365 service, 3 nines and greater. It's a really solid, robust sync capability. What is very new, and we're super, super, super excited about, is the ability in the new OneDrive client to also synchronize folders in team sites. So, for example, if I want to open up, well, that's not a very interesting folder. If I want to take, let's find a relatively small one here, these files related to the Woodgrove conference, I can go ahead and sync that. And now, with the OneDrive Sync preview, which will be being released very soon, the exact same rock-solid engine on the back end is going to synchronize those. Oh, God. Oh, I can't believe that happened. Could that have been timed any better? No. That's really bad. Let's see if it'll restart for me. The best part about that is it's getting recorded. It goes down in posterity. All right. So if we go to, let's see if it's actually happening. Oh, there we go. So there's that folder. What we see is my own personal OneDrive that I synced, as well as this folder we just synced. So I can take an entire document library from a SharePoint site, or I can take an individual folder. Those have synced down. And just to give you a little bit of background as to what I believe caused that problem, I'm still running on the preview, but more importantly, I've got multiple accounts, including these demos, which are running in very strangely flighted tenants in Office 365. So between multiple accounts and previews, that's probably what caused that to crash. Luckily, as you saw, it did recover. In addition to being able to synchronize team sites, we now have an activity center that comes with the new sync client that allows you to see exactly what's going on. So I can open up the activity center and see the files that were just downloaded, or the files that have been just uploaded. From the activity center, I can open up the folder that particular that's being synced, and I can get to the settings of OneDrive to again choose which folders are being synced or stop syncing, and I've got the ability to choose how OneDrive behaves. Let me see if I can zoom in on this. Well, no. Within the settings of OneDrive Sync, I can choose to have OneDrive start when I start Windows, which is certainly preferred. I can manage the accounts and folders that are being synced. And one of the other things we're baking into the OneDrive Sync client now is the ability to control its behavior on your network. How much bandwidth is it using to upload and download documents? And these settings that you're seeing here can be controlled through group policy. So if you want to deploy OneDrive to your organization and you want to manage its behavior, you can use group policy to do that. We also have the ability to configure other synchronization behaviors, and again, within the OneDrive client settings or through group policy. So all of that is in the new OneDrive Sync client that is, again, in preview now and will be released very, very, very soon. So lots and lots and lots of demo there, but to roll it back up to the most important points, it's about making sure that you're able to access all of your files, your individual files, your team files, wherever you are on any device, online or offline. That you can find and discover files through previews and search and discovery experiences, that you can share those files and collaborate on them with your colleagues in real time, knowing that what you're doing is secure, and the ability to start understanding the impact of your work. So that's what that's how these investments and demos really roll back up. As you go back to your organizations and think about OneDrive, I really encourage you, if you haven't looked at OneDrive recently, plan on looking at it this week, next week, very, very soon with the new OneDrive Sync client and reevaluate what role it can play to enable mobile access and rich collaboration in your organization. Our goal is to make sure that OneDrive is the best place for your files, and whether you're actually storing those in your OneDrive or in your team SharePoint sites, that sharing is seamless inside and outside your organization, that you can collaborate, and that it's all secure. So visually speaking, OneDrive powers file access. And it's doing that whether those files are surfacing to you in OneDrive, in SharePoint, in Office clients, or in Outlook. We want to make sure that we're connecting you to those files through simple modern experiences and not compromising on the stuff that really matters. What makes us different than some of our competitors is the fact that we have an incredibly robust set of services that ensure your data is secure, private, compliant, that you can control it, and backing it, these incredibly enabling services like Office 365 groups to define membership, Office Graph, Microsoft Graph to power intelligence experiences, and security and compliance. So that's the business story. But many of us in this room are probably also concerned about the IT story and the developer story. So let's spend a few moments talking about how you can ensure that all of this is under your control within your organization. First, for developers, there are other sessions on development in this Tech Summit, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about this, but OneDrive file APIs are available in Microsoft Graph, so you can build solutions that leverage OneDrive in the cloud. And in SharePoint Server 2016, Feature Pack 1, which we released in November, we released the OneDrive APIs for on-premises SharePoint Server 2016. So if you're a developer, you should find a lot of great capabilities for accessing and manipulating and working with files in OneDrive in the cloud or on-prem. For IT pros, we want to make sure everything's manageable. And I already mentioned the fact that we've enabled the new OneDrive Sync client to be deployed throughout your organization easily and to manage the settings and the behavior of OneDrive, things like bandwidth, utilization, and so forth. And one of the things that you'll find is particularly cool about the OneDrive client is when you install it, if you've already been using the old client to synchronize SharePoint sites, which you might know was called groove.exe, the new client will take over that sharing seamlessly for your users. So you can deploy that client, and it will just start doing its job right away. So we've made sure that that client can be deployed and configured by you, and then we've enabled you to really manage the security around OneDrive through a brand new capability called the OneDrive Administration Center. So let me jump back to my world here. Let's see, which is here. And I'm going to go into the OneDrive Admin Preview. And we'll take a look at some of the settings and management capabilities in the new OneDrive Admin Center. What you're seeing here is a preview. It's not available publicly yet, but will be very soon, And the user interfaces will probably change just a bit, but the goals and functionality that it's going to provide when it's released very soon is something I can show you here. So let's start with sharing. When we go to the sharing controls, this is going to allow me to manage what can be shared outside the organization from different parts of the Office 365 service. So for example, I can choose to control external sharing from SharePoint or with OneDrive. And I can then, within those two categories, pick what level of sharing is possible. The default is that sharing is available so that your users are able to collaborate as much as they want. And of course, that's just enabling it. As we saw, a user can then pick what's shared and what permissions are applied. But this is at least enabling them to take that step. You've got the ability to enforce sign-in, so that instead of sharing with a link, a user can share with, can only share by requiring sign-in, or the ability to really control which external users are being shared by saying only existing external users can be shared with, instead of a user picking someone who isn't recognized as an external user on your system already. Now let's take a look at how, well actually let's finish this up here. Same thing with OneDrive, we've got the same broad choices there. We then have the ability to determine what kinds of links are created, and I'll go into more detail here, and whether those links expire or not. Last but not least, I can choose to specify which domains can be shared with. So if, for example, I'm partnering with Contiki Travel, I can say that only ContikiTravel.com is allowed to be shared with. Or if Contiki Travel is a competitor, I can do the reverse, and I can choose to block domains. So I can either do a whitelist or a blacklist to manage external sharing. Once those settings are in place, they start driving the experience of sharing itself. So let's go back to the user experience for a moment and talk about the sharing experiences within the browser. I've got the ability to share, which gives me the ability to create an email message that can specify whether someone can edit or not, and then the type of link that is created. So this is going to be an email message, send someone a link. The question is, who can then access the document with that link? The default is anyone who has the link can access it. This has been true in Office and SharePoint for quite a while now. So if I share a document with you, you could forward it to another team member who needs to take a look to make collaboration as open and fluid as possible. But if this document needs to be restricted, I can specify that I'm only going to allow people in the organization. So that means that if I share it with you, you can't turn around and share it with someone outside the organization. Or I can be even more specific and say that if I share it with you, you're the only person who's allowed to access that particular file. Now notice the second and third options only allow me to specify permissions. That makes sense. The first option, because it's what we call an anonymous link, allows me also to specify that the link will expire. So if I'm sharing it broadly, but I want to make sure that it's just not shared forever, and it doesn't end up on a website somewhere with, in a search engine with my link in it, I can specify that this link expires. And if I choose to expire this link, I can specify a number of days. The number of days that I'm allowed to specify cannot exceed what my administrator has set. So if my administrator has set 90 days as the maximum length, I can do anything from basically 1 to 90. So the tenant setting sets the max, and then users are able to specify a link expiration within that. So we've got what type of link is generated, whether it expires, what permission it provides, and that link will then go into an email out to whomever I specify. Another way to share, very similar functionality, is just to choose Get a Link. And Get a Link generates a link that I can then copy and paste into something. So the difference here is still creating a link. It's just a matter that instead of Office generating an email out to my recipients, I get a link that I can then post into Yammer or embed in a PowerPoint presentation or email to someone myself with a much more custom message. Again, I've got the ability to specify the scope of the sharing, the permission, and the link expiration. So the difference between share and get a link is share does all the work for you of notifying the person that it's shared. Get a link gives you the link that you can then turn around and share. All of that, again, controllable in the new OneDrive Admin Center. Going further, we talked about sync. We also give you the ability in the OneDrive Admin Center to manage some of the settings of sync. So one of the settings is to allow users to actually install the OneDrive client. Now, if you're deploying the OneDrive client as part of a broader software management effort, maybe you're using group policy or a system center to deploy the client, you might choose not to let users install it manually if you're wanting to manage the deployment in your world. Secondly, I can choose to allow syncing only on domain-joined PCs. And I can specify which domains are allowed to sync. So if I want to make sure that only users on contoso.com PCs are able to sync, this is where I do it. Now, Macintoshes don't yet understand that. They're not domain joined. So what we do at this point in time in the Admin Center is give you the ability to say, just block sync on Mac OS, since they can't understand whether they're part of contoso.com or not. Now, there's other ways to tackle this problem. This is just the way that we're doing it in the current OneDrive Admin Center. Now, I'm going to turn that off for the moment so I don't mess myself up later. And last but not least, I can choose to block syncing of specific file types. So if, for example, I want to prevent people from syncing ISOs because they tend to be very, very large, I can add the ISO extension as a blocked file type in this particular list. Other organizations often will choose to keep people from syncing things like PST files or other either large or awkward file types. In storage, I can specify quotas and retention. The default quota in Office 365 is every user gets a terabyte of storage in OneDrive. You can raise that up or down for that matter. And you can also choose what happens to files when a user leaves the organization. This is a new setting and something that people have long asked for. When Dan leaves Contoso, what happens to the files in his OneDrive? Someone's probably going to need to do something with them. And step one is don't let Office delete that data when the user leaves. And so the default, if you enable this in the OneDrive, is 30 days, but you've got the ability to manage that setting. So you've got time to decide what you want to do with that data, delete certain things, maybe move other things into team sites. Then we've got policies that start reaching out to mobile devices and allow you to specify what happens on mobile devices and with mobile access. The first setting is what we call location-based policies. This policy allows you to specify IP address ranges that will be allowed access. So maybe I'm going to say anything in, anything in 10.0.0.0/16 in that subnet will be allowed access. Now, and anything outside will not. So if I really want to ensure that people only can access from a corporate network, this is where I do it. This setting right now is extremely big hammer. And so be careful with this setting and be sure that whatever address range you put in there includes the machine you're on right now, because when you click OK, it's going to take effect and you can block yourself out and have to call support to get yourself back in. So be very careful with this setting. It is a big hammer. There's more granular controls coming, including controls that are supported within Azure and other parts of the Microsoft Cloud, so please be careful with that one. Controlling access on mobile devices themselves then is the next section. And you'll notice there's all kinds of settings here that allow you to specify what users can and can't do on mobile devices. And you can then, so for example, can a user download a file? Can a user print a file? Can a user copy files from here to there? And you've got the ability to then decide whether those policies apply based on the fact that I'm on an unmanaged device. I can't download or print a file from an unmanaged device, but maybe I am allowed to on a managed device. Those kinds of settings are enabled with EMS and other parts of the Microsoft Cloud. If you have those enabled in your subscription, these will light up. And then there's one other setting that will be useful to you, which is this one. Allow access from apps that don't use modern authentication. Now, this is kind of an odd setting, so I'm going to explain this one to you so that you really understand what's happening. This setting at the top is all about what happens to devices that or applications that simply don't get policies? If you've gone to the effort of creating policies that say you can only download a document on a managed device, that's going to work if the application on a managed device knows how to work with that. But what if a user is on an unmanaged device with an application that doesn't even listen to policies? They're going to be able to download. So this setting is basically saying, I'm only going to allow access that I've defined in my policies. And the default is it leaves it off, right? So if I open this setting, this is now going to allow for people to go around my policies, which is usually not what you want to do. Does that make sense? So the default, which is off, is good. It means whatever policies you're setting are going to be enforced even on applications that don't get it. And this setting is basically saying allow people to go around my policies. And there are certain reasons why you would do that, but not often. And then finally, we get into compliance. And the compliance section allows us to drive those higher level security compliance and privacy controls that we need in many of our workloads. It allows us to view auditing, and we have incredibly rich, detailed auditing now in Office 365 in the Report Center, to manage data loss prevention policies, retention, e-discovery, and alerts. And let me actually pull up a couple of slides to step through these particular points. Sorry, up until very recently, I had to use screenshots. Now I've got the demo, so there's a couple of extra slides there. Actually, I'm going to stick here. With data loss prevention, you've got the ability across Office 365 to define what are sensitive file types. So you can, for example, say, this is how I know a credit card number is in a document, or a social security number, or some other piece of sensitive data. You define these rules, and Office 365 can apply them across content in SharePoint, Exchange, and Skype. And then you can take actions based on the detection of that sensitive data. You can notify users that that sensitive data exists. And over the next period of time here, you'll see us enable you to take specific actions on that data, whether it's things like determining retention policies, records management, and actual security and access permissions based on that DLP. So we're taking you beyond the idea that permissions is all that matters. It no longer is as simple as Dan is allowed to read this document. Dan has read permission. That worked when Dan only had one PC and was accessing the document one way. Now that Dan's on mobile devices, we need to know, is the device managed or not? What location is Dan in? What time is he using to access this document? What application is he using to access this document? And most importantly, what does the document actually contain? If the document suddenly contains sensitive information, Dan's access needs to change. And those levels of security control lead to your ability to align with the compliance regulations that are applied to your organization and be successful in supporting collaboration in your environment. So to wrap up, I want to spend a few moments on the roadmap, and then I can take questions once we're done here. Oops, sorry. Switch back to the slides. If you haven't looked at OneDrive recently, I hope you've gotten the feeling that there's a lot that's changed. Having watched OneDrive and watched many Microsoft technologies over the years, the evolution of OneDrive in the last year has been just pretty extraordinary. And I know a lot of organizations make choices about what to use for enterprise file sync and share, for collaboration. And if you made a decision to use another product ages ago, reevaluate that decision, because now you can use a rock-solid service that's integrated with all the tools your users use on a day-to-day basis and that works across platforms and devices. But we're not done. There's a lot more coming in 2017. In 2017, very, very, very soon here, we're going to be finishing the delivery of the new OneDrive Sync client, which again adds synchronization of SharePoint sites therefore your groups and teams, and folders shared with you. And that will be deployed to Mac as a standalone package so that it can run in the background without having to be brought down from the App Store. And you can see a lot more is coming that is going to allow you to collaborate more productively, more previewers, more insight into who you're sharing with, social gestures like @mentions and commenting, better ways of working with photos. We have great previews now. The experience is pretty good, but there's a lot more coming for you to work with photos. Insights and analytics, we saw the first steps of that. More APIs for developers, and even richer governance. And all of this, again, is designed to help you work across all devices. So I'm going to finish up with one last demo here to give you an idea of something that I personally use all the time and think is ridiculously cool, which is the ability within OneDrive to actually start creating content. Now, you may think to yourself, you know, it's a little difficult to create a Word document on a mobile device, and I probably wouldn't argue with that. It's not ideal. But what about capturing things? What about capturing that whiteboard when you finish the meeting? What about scanning a receipt or a document that you get? And you'll notice at the bottom, we are adding scan directly into OneDrive. This is an experience that takes great advantage of the capabilities of a mobile device, such as a phone. So I can go ahead and scan, and notice how smart it's being about detecting the edges of this. And it's going to go ahead and process that, allow me to upload it, done. And OCR is coming, so you'll be able to save that as a Word document. And as you noticed in the scan, I also had the ability to say, hey, this is a business card. And if it were, in fact, a business card, it would actually turn it into an ICS file that I could add into my contacts, or something like a whiteboard. And the cool thing about the whiteboard is it's particularly good at helping me de-skew the document and sort of make it instantly readable. Very, very cool, huh? Yeah, you can applaud. That's all right. So download the latest applications for Android, Windows, and iOS. Download the Sync client and evaluate it. This is the URL for it, aka.ms, Team Site Sync preview. And I would encourage you to evaluate this quickly. At this moment in Chicago in January of 2017, for those of you who are listening to the recording, at this moment I would say evaluate it yourself. Don't deploy it to your organization yet, simply because it's coming very, very soon. So evaluate it, take a look, and be ready to deploy it as soon as it's released. There's a lot more resources for you. I'll leave these up as you leave the room. And this is only the beginning of the file sharing story. When we move into team collaboration with SharePoint team sites, we get even more capabilities around how we work with, organize, manage, and automate file-centric processes. We'll be talking about those in our next session, so please stick around if you can. I'm assuming it's in this room. If it's not, we can all run quickly to the next room. Thank you very, very much for coming. If you've got questions, feel free to come up and ask so we can take them off the recording. Have a wonderful day, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the Tech Summit. Have a great one.